Castle to Coast Kids Virtual Junior Ranger Program. We're going to look at babies today. Here at Hearst Castle, we'll look at art babies, and then we're going to move down to Morro Bay State Park, where Mariana is going to show you wildlife babies. First, we'll talk about this mask I'm wearing. This is part of our state park effort to keep everyone safe. We're wearing the mask so we don't spread germs during the COVID-19 virus that's going around. If no one's around me, and I am doing my own recording today, I may take my mask off for just a minute here and there to unfog my glasses, but only if no one's around. Now, Hearst Castle is named after William Randolph Hearst. He was a man who owned a lot of newspapers and magazines, radio stations, even a film production company at one time, and he built his dream house here in San Simeon, California. But today it's a museum, and in that museum is part of Mr. Hearst's art collection. More than 10,000 works of art are in the museum now, and within that are a lot of art babies. I'm going to flip the camera here so you can see Mr. Hearst's house. Very big house, 4 stories tall, up to those bell towers, the bottom of the bell towers of the 4th story where guests would sometimes stay. And the front of the house is where we see our first art babies. They're called names like cherubs or seraphim or putti. There's even a Roman god who looks like a little baby. I'm not going to say his name yet. Think about the Roman gods you've studied. If you've been through 6th grade in the state of California, you studied ancient civilizations. So that god might be in your memory banks. But for now, we're going to move a little closer to the house. Do you see those cherubs anywhere? They're kind of small. I'm going to put in a still picture in just a minute. But right, I use my finger right along here. There are little naked babies with their backs to us. It looks like they're holding up the whole building. Their arms are a little bit of a different color than their bodies because they had to be repaired after a very big earthquake in 2003. I'm going to go to a picture now so you can get a better look. Almost there. And there we go. You can see the babies and then their arms right here, a little different color. Has anyone watching today had a broken arm at any given time? Or you've known someone with a broken arm? Well, we go to an expert to help repair that broken bone, usually a doctor. Here, our restoration staff makes these kinds of repairs to art. And so they repaired this arm and the arms of the other art babies here on the front, these cherubs on the front of the house. And now we're going to walk around the side of the house. It's a very kind of spooky day up in the clouds at Hearst Castle. If you've ever looked up in the sky and seen clouds and wondered what's inside, well, sometimes it's us. Way up on the hilltop. The sculpture we're approaching, this marble sculpture right there. We're going to come closer. And here you see a father and child. The father is the god Mars, god of war, and sitting at his feet are that little Roman god. Did anyone remember his name? It's Cupid, the god of love and desire. And we're going to see him one more time at the end of the tour. Cupid is often used in modern pop culture, popular culture. And because he's the god of love, we're going to walk this way toward one of the cottages. But because he's the god of love, he's often depicted on cards and Valentine's for Valentine's Day. We saw the big house a moment ago. Mr. Hearst called that Casa Grande. That means big house in Spanish. Well, there are also 3 cottages on this estate, and this is one of them. They're named for their view, though we can see there is no view today. Behind those clouds are the Santa Lucia mountain range, and this house is called Casa del Monte. Does anyone in the audience speak Spanish? If you do, you can tell everyone what that means. For those of you who don't know, it's called House of the Mountain. We're going past some roses. Mr. Hurst has a large garden here. And then in through these giant wooden doors. Mr. Hurst's guests would have stayed in this cottage and 2 more on the property. Now we're in the lobby of Casa del Monte. And here's where more of those art babies here. It's a little bit dark, but if you look along the frieze, and that's not like frozen frieze, it's like F-R-I-E-Z-E, that space between the ceiling and at the very top of the wall. This is a canvas, a painting on canvas, and in the corners, you can see these big chubby babies, and those are the putti. Cherubs were often associated with religion. They were angels, although the story differs from story to story. But the putti were a little bit different. They were normally not related to the Bible until they were, because that story changes too. And in the Baroque period, which is the 17th century, this is a 17th century work of art, that changes. But if guests of Mr. Hurst walked in from the bright light outside, which is usually what the weather's like here, they might have missed the putti entirely and come right into their bedroom and stayed in this antique Italian bed. So maybe they would have crawled into bed at night and not really thought about the room around them until they woke up the next day and saw this on their ceiling. What kind of ceiling do you have at home? Is it painted a solid color? Do you have posters? Or does it look like this? See all those little faces? You can see the wings around each square. Each face has a different expression. They have different hairstyles. And these are seraphim, which are often described as the highest rank of angels, working as God's attendant. Some of the guests who come here, some of the children say, oh, those are so cool, look at those faces. And I've heard other children say, they're kind of freaky. And that's the thing about art. You get to decide what you think. But if you were a guest who thought they were a little freaky, maybe you would get up and leave your room and go into the living room, which Mr. Hurst called the sitting room. Go back through the lobby and into the sitting room, where guests might play the piano, sit on the furniture, look at the portraits, or if they turn back to the doorway, they would see more cherubs. These are made out of wood or plaster, and they're covered in gold. That kind of gold on the surface of art is called gold leaf. Very, very thin layer of gold, thinner than paper even. What do you think of these cherubs? What do you think of the expression on his face? Think he's happy or tired or just kind of doing his job? Resting in the doorway? Walking through this sitting room are more cherubs on the other door.
Some of the guests who come to Hearst Castle like to pose next to the cherubs and imitate the pose they're making. So if you're at home, I don't know if you could do it stand up, maybe you do it lying on the floor. See if you can take the pose of this cherub. Guests spent a lot of time outside too. So we're going to see if we can find some more cherubs or maybe a Roman god. Go back out this big door. And up to the big walkway where Mr. Hearst and his guests spent some of their time enjoying the day or enjoying the evening. This big walkway is called an esplanade. It's about 1/4 mile long, so about the size of a standard middle school or high school track. And the guests would have passed other art. She's called Europa. Don't see any other cherubs yet. We have other workers here, which we'll occasionally see. We're going to see some of our gardening staff go by. Give them a wave. And more down there. If you see people without their masks, it's because they're working alone and very far from other people, keeping everyone safe. These aren't cherubs. They're called fauns, the little creatures, by a French artist called Félix Favela. Mr. Hearst's garden style is called the Italian Renaissance Gardens because it has features of outdoor art. It has water features as well. No babies here, but we have a sarcophagus. For those of you who have studied ancient civilizations, do you know what a sarcophagus is? They're a tomb, like a coffin for burial. Most cultures have a tradition when someone dies, just like we do. And above it, young women, not babies, but they're called the Three Graces. The original sculpture is by an artist named Antonio Canova, but these are a copy of that, inspired by that, by an artist called Boyer. But let's see if we can find those babies. We're still on the esplanade. I hear one of the water features. Do you hear the water? No babies here. There is a lion-headed goddess named Sekhmet, more than 3,000 years old. And there's the fountain. On our way to find more babies. We're going to go on to the South Terrace and see if any babies are there. Aha. Some cherubs in concrete adorning the balustrades. This kind of wall is called a balustrade. And here's that Roman god again. What was his name? Cupid. For the Greeks, he was called Eros. He's posing as if holding his attribute. An attribute is an item that's associated with these gods, and that attribute is a hint, a clue as to who that god is. And Cupid is that bow and arrow. We see where he's holding his arrows in the back, but what's he aiming at? The big house. That's where we were standing early on. As we cross the South Terrace, there's Sekhmet behind that cart. We just met her. And another Cupid. Let's get a close-up look. It is very difficult sometimes to carve eyes in stone. So different artists had different ways of creating the eye. What do you think of that? Would you do it that way if you were creating a sculpture? I've seen many, many guests. His fingers are broken off a little. Sometimes that happens over time, or sometimes guests who come here aren't careful. We don't touch the art, and that includes the employees, except for the restoration and collection staff who keep everything in working order. Let's come to this side. But he's aiming his arrow toward the air. Looks like no one can get hurt from that. But if Cupid's arrow lands on you, maybe you'll fall in love. Or is that a myth? So many guests do pose like these Cupids. We see it on a regular basis. Can you take that pose? Are you sitting in a chair or on the couch, maybe in the floor? Aim like you're shooting with a bow and arrow and think about what you might aim at. We'll decide it's a soft, spongy arrow so it doesn't hurt anyone. And Cupid sits here on his dolphin. And walking over to this railing, we're really in thick clouds today. Because normally from this site, we can see the Pacific Ocean from here, even though it's miles down the hill from us. Let me turn this around. But today, our view is obscured. Everything's still there, we just can't see it. And right now, we're going to travel down the coastline of the Pacific Ocean all the way down to Morro Bay, California, to Morro Bay State Park, where Mariana is waiting to show us all about those wildlife babies. I want to thank everyone for coming here today and being a part of this experience. My glasses are steaming up. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone. That was awesome. I had no idea there were so many art babies up at Hearst Castle. I learned quite a bit of information, new information. My name is Mariana, just like Paula said, and I am also an interpreter for California State Parks. So I work for the symbol on my hat. I am in a public location, so I do have my mask on, but there is no one around me. So I'm going to take this time to give you a quick smile so you have an idea of what my face looks like. Whoops. All right, put this back on. Okay, and I am at Morro Bay State Park, and I'll give you a quick view of where I'm at. I am at the Marina Boardwalk, and I have this awesome view of a certain habitat that I'm going to talk about more, but I just want to talk a little bit about the weather and just give you a glimpse of the area I'm standing in. So it is overcast, but still bright. It actually sprinkled on my way here. Pretty cool though. A little bit chilly. I'm still wearing my jacket. Okay, so Hearst Castle and Morro Bay State Park are part of the same district. We're part of the San Luis Obispo Coast District, but Morro Bay is located about 20 to 30 miles away from Hearst Castle, and I have a cool map to show you where we are compared to Hearst Castle. So this kind of gives you an idea of the coastline that the San Luis Obispo Coast District encompasses. We have about 40 miles here. You can see Hearst Castle is way up on the left side of the picture, and then Morro Bay is on the bottom right. So we're pretty close to each other, I have to say. And here is an image of Morro Bay State Park. Yeah. You can see that there's a lot of land that this state park covers, and we have a lot of water nearby. Morro Bay State Park is home to many different types of animals and plants, and there's some pretty awesome, significant habitats. But today we're going to be talking about one type of habitat being the animal babies that you can see here in Morro Bay State Park. So let's get to it. I am currently at Morro Bay Estuary. That is part of the view that you see behind me. This is actually the salt marsh, which is influenced by the tides of the ocean. But what is an estuary? What could an estuary be? Well, an estuary is where freshwater or rainwater flows down through creeks, streams, rivers, meets, and mixes with the salt ocean. That's a pretty cool habitat, right? And we have the Pacific Ocean right to the left of where I'm currently standing, and then we have a whole bunch of land surrounding the estuary where that fresh water comes from. And that land that surrounds the estuary is known as a watershed. Watershed is just where fresh water is able to run, collect, and then go out into a common outlet. We all live in a watershed. And I encourage you to learn more about your watershed because it doesn't have to just flow into an estuary like this. It might flow to another type of body of water, maybe a lake or a pond. Those are just a few examples of where fresh water might end up. And I want you to kind of think about other materials that might flow down those creeks and streams and rivers and actually harm this habitat. Just keep that in the back of your head while we go through this program. Okay, so now we have a better idea of what an estuary is. What type of animals might we see here? I don't know. What type of animals might we see here? Give you a second to think about it while I show you kind of a bigger picture of what the estuary looks like. So I took this picture going on a hike up a mountain called Black Hill. And this is really big. This is how big our estuary is. And you can kind of see where those creeks and streams are coming from the land around the estuary. That's pretty awesome. There's actually 23,000 acres of land here that the estuary covers. That is a big number. Kind of hard to picture 23,000 acres. So let's break it down. Imagine you're on a football field. Well, a football field is a little over an acre. In order to cover this entire estuary, you would need about 17,400 football fields. Wow, that is a very big number. Really hard to imagine that you would need that many football fields in order to cover this land. That is amazing. And then here's another view of the estuary. A little bit more to the right. And this estuary has a very unique feature compared to other estuaries, and that is the sand spit. The sand spit is actually very visible on this picture. It is that sand barrier that you see way in the back of this photo, connecting to Morro Rock. So that really big mountain-looking object on this image is Morro Rock. So the sand spit is a barrier. It actually protects the estuary from those rough ocean waves. There is a little bit of a gap between the sand spit and Morro Rock that allows for calm salt water to come into the estuary. But because of that barrier, this estuary is able to support a whole bunch of wildlife. And those calm waters also allow for a nursery to develop. A nursery is basically a place or location where young animals or plants grow. And in the animal case, this is a great location for parents to raise their young. So that's why we would see a lot of animal babies here at Morro Bay Estuary. And we might end up seeing this little guy. What could that be? This is a southern sea otter. It is a marine mammal, and you might be able to see this marine mammal baby if you were to visit Morro Bay State Park. A second ago, I just said that this southern sea otter is a marine mammal. What does that mean? Let's break it up together. Marine means the ocean, and mammal is a warm-blooded animal. If you took your finger and you pointed to yourself, you are a mammal. But we're not marine mammals. We don't spend all of our life out at sea. And also, another cool characteristic about being a marine mammal is that they get all of their food source from the ocean. So now we have a better idea of what marine mammal is. Let's talk about the southern sea otter. You might be able to see pups there. A sea otter baby is called a pup. So I might be using that word quite a bit. And I have an awesome picture of a mother sea otter with its pup. Look at how cute it is. It's a little fluff ball. Well, female sea otters usually can have a baby or a pup at any point of the year. There is no particular season in which you'll see more or less sea otter pups. You might be able to see in the fall, winter, summer, all of those seasons. It's pretty cool and unique. And the pup will stay with its mother for about 6 months. And within those 6 months, the first 2 to 3 is when the pup will be nursing from its mother. So it's going to be having milk during those times. And when they're about 6 to 8 weeks, they might be trying some solid food, right? And something interesting about sea otter pup is that really fluffy fur that you see in this image actually prevents them from diving. So their baby fur is so thick and buoyant, they're unable to dive. So they really need to rely on their mother for food. And they might be trying to dive when they're about 8 to 8.5 weeks old. So that's about 2 months. Pretty cool. What other type of wildlife babies might we see in the estuary? This one is not a marine mammal, but we have baby sharks. What? Usually when I say the word shark, you're probably thinking of perhaps a great white shark, those big ones, right?
Well, in the estuary, we don't have those big sharks. You might see a great white off the coast in the Pacific Ocean, but not in the estuary. It would be very rare for that to occur. But instead, we have smaller sharks that are slow swimmers and love the shallow waters. We have about 3 different types of small sharks that you might be able to see in the estuary. And also, apparently, it's Shark Awareness Day. Yay! So it's kind of cool that we're learning a little bit about the Morro Bay sharks. So the 3 you might see are horn sharks, swell sharks, and leopard sharks. But let's dive into what is a swell shark. And I have a cool image of a swell shark that I want to show you. Okay, so this is kind of a tough image, but this is a swell shark. It is laying at the bottom, so it might be difficult for us to see since we're usually above the surface of the water. But this is a cool shark that you might see if you were maybe swimming in the estuary, going scuba diving, or snorkeling. Pretty funny looking. And it says on the bottom that this swell shark lies on a sandy bottom material and its tail is curled toward its head. This swell shark loves to eat crustaceans. So those are animals where they have an exoskeleton. So they have a hard substance on the outside of their body. We, as humans, we have an endoskeleton. So that is when our skeleton is inside our body. That might be a new term for many of you, right? So crustaceans are animals with exoskeletons. You might know a few, actually. If you know what a crab is, a lobster, a sea urchin, those are examples of certain crustaceans that a swell shark might eat. Maybe you have eaten a crab or a lobster in your life. So they like to eat crustaceans, small fishes, and maybe some snails or even an octopus, a small octopus. So that's what it likes to eat. And these animals love to patiently wait for their food source to come to them. Might be kind of a lazy way to kind of get their food, but that's what they do. They are able to just patiently wait for a prey to come by, and then they suck that prey into their mouth. That's one way, that's their main way of how they obtain their food source. And here's a close-up of a swell shark's face. And they get that name because of a defensive mechanism that they have. So they are actually able to suck up a whole bunch of air or water to make themselves look bigger in case of a predator comes near them. That is such a cool adaptation. So something that they're able to do to allow them to successfully live in the estuary away from predators. And another cool fact that I want to share is how they have their babies. So they actually lay eggs, and their eggs look like this. We kind of think this looks like a mermaid purse. I don't know about you, but I kind of see it. And so these swell sharks lay their eggs on rocky, algae-covered surfaces. So that's what we see in this picture. It has that large encasement. It's a tough case. And you know what? When I saw this in an aquarium, I had no idea that it looked like this. This is awesome. Can you believe that sharks are able to do this? Swell sharks aren't the only ones that have casings like this, but swell shark is one example that lays eggs. So cool. Let's talk about one more type of shark that you might see, a baby shark, that you might see in Morro Bay estuary, and that would be a leopard shark. So here's a picture of what a leopard shark looks like. We actually have a certain location called Shark Inlet where you might be able to see hundreds of leopard shark babies, also known as pups. Just like the sea otter baby, their leopard shark babies are called pups. It's a common name that a lot of how we describe young animals as pups. So there's a lot of leopard pups during a certain season. And that season is right now. We are at the end of the leopard shark time. It's usually between March and July is where you might see a lot of young leopard sharks. And it's usually closer to another state park that is nearby called Montaña de Oro State Park, but it's also in the estuary, in Morro Bay Estuary. So that is why I wanted to share this cool shark that lives here in the estuary. But a cool, distinct feature that leopard sharks have are those dark spots on the back, on its back. Kind of reminds me of a leopard print, maybe. I think I see it, don't you? Kind of has that leopard print. Maybe that's why it's called leopard shark. But these sharks have their young a little bit differently than the swell shark that I just mentioned. Remember, the swell shark lay eggs in that cool mermaid purse looking egg case. Well, the leopard shark actually gives live birth. Whoa, and they can have about 37 pups a season. That is a lot of baby leopard sharks. And again, we are at the end of that season. So after this month, we might not see as many leopard shark pups. But 37 pups, whoa. And if we have a lot of leopard sharks here. So imagine all those females having their pups. All right. And I want to talk about a few more babies, but I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to give an overview of some more wildlife babies that you might see here in Morro Bay Estuary, and that is birds. This is a great habitat for birds to rest, nest, and breed. And we can have up to 20,000 birds visiting Morro Bay during the winter time. And here is a cool image that one of our docents, so a volunteer for state parks, took of one of the seasons in which all the birds came to visit Morro Bay. So Morro Bay has a lot of fish. This is a very healthy environment, and because it's healthy, that means that there's a lot of fish and resources for birds to use. So this is a really important spot for migratory birds. So birds that don't necessarily stay with us year round, but come to visit here because they know it's a safe place for them to find food and also have their young. And also, it's a great place for birds to stay here all year round. So those are other types of wildlife babies that you might see here in Morro Bay State Park. So I kind of went over a lot of different wildlife babies that you might see here. We had sea otter pups, we had swell shark pups, we had leopard shark pups, and we have a lot of birds, baby birds, that call Morro Bay State Park home, and where they learn to become adults, and hopefully where they will end up having their own young. So it's really important that we do our jobs in protecting this area. And we can do that a few ways. We can help promote a whole bunch of life here at Morro Bay State Park. Even if you're not from Morro Bay, you can still help us out. And you can do that by just picking up after yourself. So important and also so simple to do. Anytime you're outside, take a moment to just scan your location. Just scan, maybe do a circle. And if you see trash and you can safely pick it up, please do it and store it in a proper location. So maybe put it in a trash can, and if it's recyclable, put it in a recycling can. Or if there's no place at the moment or where you're standing at to throw it away, just put it in your pocket and wait until you get home. But trash can travel. Trash can sometimes flow through the creeks and streams near you, right? And end up in the ocean or maybe even in your drinking water. So we want to be very respectful and we want a healthy environment, right? Healthy environment, healthy wildlife, healthy people. And one way to do that is just by picking up after ourselves. And one other way we can help protect this beautiful earth, not just Morro Bay Estuary, is just being respectful towards all wildlife and plant life. Just sticking to the trails and not disturbing any wildlife that we might come across. Giving them space because they know how to survive in this environment. They've been doing it for generations and generations. They know how to support themselves. They don't need our help. So those are two ways that we can help keep a healthy environment and just those are two ways that we can help keep a healthy environment that helps all wildlife and plant life and us. Well, that wraps up today's Junior Ranger program, the Castle to Coast Kids. Again, my name is Mariana. There is no one around me again, so I'm just going to take off my mask really quickly. I just want to thank you for tuning in to today's program, and I hope to see you soon. Have a lovely rest of your day, and tomorrow you're going to be heading a little bit north from Morro Bay up to Hearst-Simeon State Park to learn about an amazing marine mammal, the northern elephant seals, with interpreter Monica. All right, so I guess it's time to sign off. Again, have a lovely rest of your day and hope to see you soon.